Hello, Sasha Graham here with your video guidebook to Tarot of the Haunted House. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at my favorite suit in the tarot deck, the suit of Wands. So we begin with the Ace of Wands. Now, Wands represent the element of fire. So when we're looking at any wand card in a tarot reading, immediately we're looking at issues of desire, passion, fire, that energy that wakes us up in the morning and like gets us out of bed. It's very much the suit of spirituality, of passion, of fire. And, you know, we all know what that feels like inside of us. So I thought that the Ace of Wands would be beautifully this idea of ignition, this idea of the start of something new, because that's what aces represent, the beginning of something new, would be beautifully illuminated by the lighting of a candle. And so here in this card, we see that that raven is actually holding a candle, and it is a male hand who's reaching out to light it. And you can kind of see with the background of the card, there's a bunch of other candles lit as well. So when this card appears in a reading for you, obviously it's about the beginning of passion. It's about that spark that begins to grow. And of course, that's what happens from the ace as it moves through the suit of the minor arcana, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5 of aces. It continues to kind of develop. And maybe at a certain point, you know, when we think about the elements and how they relate to tarot and the progression of the minor arcana, we can also look at what happens with any of the elements, including fire, what happens when there gets to be a lot of it and it kind of gets out of control. And so what starts as a warm flame, you know, may turn into a raging fire that's out of control. And we can look at that with all of the aces, you know, the beautiful Ace of Cups, which is traditionally just this flow. You know, at what point does that then become, you know, a tsunami? Or yeah, so anyway, the same thing, you can do the same thing with the Ace of Swords, like the beauty of a singular thought, you know, as opposed to a tornado. Which has the capability to destruct, you know, everything, or even the Ace of Pentacles, you know, a seed or one beautiful material thing. You know, at what point does that maybe become an avalanche? So it's a really great way to look at how the elements relate to ourselves and our body. And so, yeah, with the element of fire, it's pretty much the easiest one, I think, to understand, because we all know when we've got heat in our belly and in our hearts. And in our minds. So yeah, so that's the ace, a candle. Now the 2 of Wands. I love the idea behind this card and the execution of this card, because the 2 of Wands is about the duality of fire, and very often, and especially in the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot, the 2 of Wands is really is about planning ahead for the future. What better way would you want to kind of think about your future than with a divinatory tool? So be it tarot or a Ouija board or any kind of, like, you know, reading bones or whatever. I just thought that I thought a Ouija board between 2 candles, and then in paying reference to the Pamela Coleman Smith 2 of Wands, where the figure is standing out looking over the ocean, you know, I thought how beautiful and how lovely to take some time to kind of light candles and divine into the spiritual world under the light of the full moon. And you see the window is open and the ocean is still. And so there's this opening. There's very much this visioning into the future, and kind of like everything is at your disposal. So, and one of the great things, you know, when we work with tarot or any divining device, is we have to stop, or presumably we stop and think, well, what information am I looking for? You know, if you had a talking board, a talking Ouija board, and a helpful spirit nearby that wanted to give you information, what would you ask? So when the Two of Wands comes up, it's really about what is it that you want? What's your end game? You know, that's why that world is in the card, is in the hand of the character traditionally on the Two of Wands. So yeah, when this card comes up, what are you working towards? Because everything's open and working in your favor. So where are you going to go? I'm laughing. Now we're on to the next card, the three of Wands. Every time I look at a new card, I'm like, oh, I love this card, but I really do. I really do. And I really love this deck. Now, I'll say straight away, I have an affinity for this card because it's very specifically related to an image I had captured on of a book cover of a beautiful woman kind of coming downstairs in the midst of like the middle of the night with the three candles in her hands. So it's very much, this card is very full of, you've maybe heard a noise downstairs, the power's out. So you grab your candelabra and you go downstairs to see what it might be. What was that bump in the night? But in the haunted house, because threes represent creativity, and the Three of Wands is really about the creativity of fire. There's this idea that she's going downstairs, not so much afraid of what she's going to find, because let's face it, like if you were really heard a noise in the middle of the night that sounded that scary, you just wouldn't go down at all. I mean, I wouldn't. I'd like lock my door and call the police, right? Be safe. You never want to be that character in the horror movie that's making the choices that everybody's screaming at you. No, don't go down. So there's an optimism to this card that that she's willing to greet whatever is knocking around her subconscious, or whatever's knocking around the on the downstairs floors. She's going to investigate, really find out what it is, and really greet it, and not be freaked out by it. So it's a brave card. It's creative, but it's also sensual. You know, she's in her beautiful nightgown and it's late at night. Those times when, you know, it's easy for us to encounter the things that we've been hiding. So I love that card. Okay, Four of Wands. So there needed to be, I thought, a kind of subversive group operating. We're talking a cult, we're talking a secret society. And when I was conceiving of this deck, I had very much been influenced by an immersive theater piece in New York City called Sleep No More. It's still running in New York. I think it's been running for over a decade now. And in this immersive theater piece, the audience, you, the audience member, gets to put on a mask, just like in this card, a Venetian mask. And you get to wander through this huge hotel while these dancers and actors are performing, I think it's Macbeth, around you. And it is like so next level cool. And so I wanted to bring the Sleep No More idea in, and the idea of secret societies, of cults, of the kind of creepiness that happens. Like groups, just think about like groups are already kind of terrifying just in and of themselves. Like groups can be very helpful, but they can also be very sinister. And the moment at which you encounter a masked group where you can't see what's going on, like if who you're dealing with, it's really terrifying and really, I thought, well suited for this deck. So we've got a creepy secret society, but they've been kind of interrupted by a ritual that they were doing. Now, one of the aspects of the Four of Wands is that the number 4 reflects stability. So it's the stability of fire. And that's why I like the table and the placement of the 4 wands. In the traditional deck, it's a celebration. It's usually, the 4 of Wands usually represents like a summer party. And we see the 4 wands on the chuppah. So we've got stability. We have a crowd gathered together. We have the ritual table. So you can even go off the 3 of Wands and, you know, think that maybe that that Raven has gone downstairs to discover what that noise is, and she discovers there's this subversive group operating in and around the haunted house and on the island, and that maybe, just maybe, they've summoned her to put her down on that ritual table and perhaps perform some sort of rite upon her. And then, of course, there's a sexual element to this as well, because we're looking at the suit of wands, of fire. So we're also moving into, we can also look at this with a Stanley Kubrick lens of that great movie he made with Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise, which was heavily sexual. And so we can also bring in this idea of group sex, of public erotic acts, of the idea of voyeurism, and the idea of hiding behind a mask. But no matter what you want to bring to your interpretation of this card, I just think that it's important to remember that fours reflect stability. And so yeah, I don't think they have the best intentions for our heroine, but that's okay. We need something to fight against, because that's what carves us into who we are. And so here you see the group is out of control. Our secret society is now battling with each other. Perhaps they had laid Raven down on the ritual table, and now half the group wants her free, and the other half of the group wants her to be sacrificed or used for whatever their nefarious intentions are. But clearly there's a lot of action going on. The Five of Wands traditionally represents friction and action. It's often groups worked up into a frenzy. It's often drama. Drama and fire is a perfect, like drama at work, drama with your family or your friend group. So this is about everybody kind of being worked up. The great thing about the element of fire is often combustion and chaos breeds a creative idea. So often really good things can come out of people who are worked up together, who are actively engaging with one another, but maybe not in a, do or die way. So there's all of this element happening with the Five of Wands, which is, I think it's actually quite similar to Pixie Smith's Five of Wands as well. So in the Six of Wands, well, whatever was going on with how they were like the secret society were trying to do terrible things to Raven, she's not having it. She is out of there. Now, traditionally, the Six of Wands is a victory parade. And so, Raven has escaped, and she is on higher ground, represented being, high up on the horse, and she's getting out of there. She is claiming victory by saving herself and getting away from a group of people who are not necessarily cheering her on. So yeah, this is the card of her great escape, and she definitely will get out of there alive. And one other thing that I was happy to do with this deck that Pamela Coleman Smith did, and it's a symbolism trick to remember when you're intuiting the sixes in tarot. Sixes are the heart center of the tree of life. And so whenever you're looking at a 6 card in tarot, and especially in like one of my decks or Pamela Coleman Smith's tarot, there's always a character, there's always a hierarchy. There's always a figure above other figures. And this is very much because the heart center is the place that everything passes through in the tree of life. So whether you're looking at the journey of emergence, the things that are moving down the tree, or the journey of return, which is kind of moving back up the tree, there's this idea of a transference of energy. So that's also why she is pictured high above everybody else. And the 7 of Wands, so they've cornered her. She's escaped on the horse, but they're still coming after her, and she's fighting back. And And this card is very much, it always makes me think of the end of Frankenstein, a crowd out to kind of get you, group think, things that go out of control. It also represents those times where we feel very much as if people are kind of against us, whether that's a real thing or not, whether that's in our head or actually real. But it's definitely that moment at which you're kind of at odds with everybody else, but you're on higher ground. So that's the good news. It's very similar to the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith. And for the 8 of Wands, we have that beautiful flying through the sky of torches. The 8 of Wands represents messages and energy that's already in motion. We don't know where everything's going to land, right? But I love the point of view of this card because in a way, it's almost as if all of the wands are heading towards you. You know, if they've been catapulted, there's this energy that's coming to you. And so it's very much this 8 of Wands is about being the receptacle of energy, which, if it's good energy, is a really great thing. Like we think about healing circles or sending healing energy to someone. It can be very wonderful to receive good, warm things from other people. That being said, when this card appears for you in a reading, you might want to think about what kind of energy that you want to be receiving. So if there's an energy that you've been around a lot that you don't necessarily want to receive, how can you protect yourself? How can you step away from being the recipient of all of these energies and messages and things? You know, because life is coming at us all the time from all sides. So it's very much a card, I think, in this deck about boundaries as well, about deciding whether you want to be open or if you want to be kind of protective. And just about the curiosity always of where those wands are going to land. And traditionally, I feel like when you're laying cards out in a multi-card spread, the card that comes after the 8 of Wands, when the 8 of Wands appears, will always give you kind of a good indication of where that stuff is going to land, you know, because it's an airborne card. So yes. Oh, this is another one. The next card, the 9 of Wands. This is another one of the cards that I just adore so much, because who doesn't love a hedge labyrinth behind a haunted house? Literally, this is an image of my dream backyard. And for so many reasons. And there's so much great symbolism in this card. So first of all, the 9 of Wands. The 9 is the wish fulfillment card. So you've got a lot accrued. Oh, wait, am I saying? Yeah, no, I'm saying that right. So traditionally in the 9 of Wands, we see that figure kind of stepping through what looks like a fence. So in this case, we've got a fence of wands that's been open and waiting for Raven to come right through. And so the fact that she's carrying a torch in her hand represents that she's got that kind of winning idea, and that she's chosen and stoked her fire well. And presumably she's made it through that labyrinth, because that's the direction that she's coming out of. So when we look at all of the symbolism that labyrinths have, from the Minotaur, from figuring out what lay in the labyrinth, we can think again of The Shining and that wonderful, I guess there's a lot of Stanley Kubrick in this deck. I didn't even realize it until now. It just struck me. That's 2 Stanley Kubrick films that I'm referencing. But all of the things the labyrinth implies, the maze of our lives, of our lower selves, of also being able to figure something out. And so there she is, she's stepping through those wands into a new reality. That's the other thing I love about all 9 of Wands cards, is it's, to me, always marks that moment of going into the unknown, kind of like, it always makes me think of a kid trick-or-treating, maybe on, on a really dark Halloween night, playing in the darkness, going out and exploring, because it's about pushing boundaries of darkness, but you're illuminating it for the first time. And you've been through a lot because it's a 9, so there's a lot of history there, but suddenly something's open. So I just think the symbolism on this card is really evocative, because labyrinths are just so, and a labyrinth behind a haunted house. I mean, it's the best. It's the best. 10 of Wands. I always have an issue with a 10. I don't love the 10 of Wands that Pamela Coleman Smith drew. It's so arduous to see that figure bent over with all of the wands on the back. But that being said, wands are an exhausting suit. And by the time you've got 10 burning wands, it's like, I vibe really strongly with the suit of wands and the energy of fire, but it does exhaust you. You do need a break. And so this is the point at which she's done with this particular story. I do not subscribe to the idea that the cult that she has escaped have put her on this pyre. They're not the ones that are burning her. Rather, the idea that she's going to let this kind of engulf her, this cycle, this situation, she's going to allow it to engulf her and kind of cleanse her. And I also think that it's important to always remember, the history that we have of burning women, of burning witches. It's so horrific and it's so horrible. And it's so true that the feminine element is so malign, and that powerful women, were murdered just for being powerful or being themselves or being out in the woods, like doing their thing, like to be terrified of an old woman that lives in the woods. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. It's horrifying. And I think that fortune telling in general is so much part and parcel of witchcraft that I often like to put characters into situations where they are being burned at the stake, because it's not just women, and men that were burned for being witches, but also book burning, and this idea of the destruction on fire. This is not like a funeral where, a body is burned and being given over to the element of fire. This is very much a human being burned. And I just can't imagine how horrible that was, and that people would do that. And it just makes me sad. So I think it's an important thing to keep in tarot decks. And I also do like the idea, though, the other side of this card is letting your fire run its course, because no fire can be sustained forever and ever. And so that's really what this card is about. The fires are coming to a conclusion, and yeah, so there's a cleansing element to the card too. So that is the 10 of Wands. Now on to our court cards, which are the vampires. Now, when I was conceiving of the deck, it was tough for me to figure out which suit to use for vampires, because vampires would work really well with swords as well, especially with their sharp teeth. But because a vampire's sustenance is blood, because vampires are so passionate, and let's face it, really emotional too. Like they're so, especially, Anne Rice's wonderful vampires, they're so dramatic and fiery and sexual. I mean, vampires are such innately sexual, supernatural creatures. There was no way I could put the vampires in with the swords. They had to be wands. So that's why I've chosen vampire court cards. So here we have the Page of Wands, which is a young vampire She is now, of course, because this is a really great haunted house island, there is an abandoned playground on the island and quite near the haunted house. So she is on a merry-go-round, and she's playing with the element of fire and kind of protecting it, but also being dazzled by it. The idea also of being on a merry-go-round, and we can think of one of the best merry-go-round scenes from vampire movies that we all know and love, is in the beginning of The Lost Boys, when there's that slow motion shot of Kiefer Sutherland and his crew walking through a merry-go-round, and also the fire that gets whipped up. There's something really spooky and also beguiling about merry-go-rounds in general. And kind of the high that you get when you're on them, that really you feel in your belly, which is so much like the element of fire and passion and desire. So like a good merry-go-round or a really good thrill ride in an amusement park will give you that tummy flipping feeling, like when you're falling in love or attracted to someone. So I loved all of that encapsulated in the youth of a young vampire, and that maybe this is her, life-size merry-go-round to play with as well. So that's the page. Then, of course, we've got a sexy, just like a hot vampire teen energy. He's got a torch for you. Oh yeah, he's holding it. And the bats are flying out, and he's just, he seems like totally seems like this knight of not the Knight of Wands. This vampire would hang out with the Knight of Swords. Like they almost seem like blood brothers. But yeah, there he is, the exciting, combustible energy of a teenage vampire. Yeah, yum. Yay. I don't know. I don't feel like that card needs a lot of description. For our Queen of Wands, I've had a lot of people really respond to this queen. Mirko drew her so seductively. I liked that. Now, the Queen of Wands, one of the interesting things just in general about Queen of Wands in any deck is the Queen of Fire. So let's just stop and think for a moment, literally what that means to be the Queen of Fire. The feminine embodiment of fire. And so when this card comes up, oftentimes the court cards are telling us what we want to remember about ourselves or an attitude that we want to take. And so I love that a Queen of Wands represents a woman who's harnessed her desire rather than kind of driven crazy by it. So it's about understanding the things that you're really passionate about and allowing their energy to kind of fill you with passion, fill you with fire, harnessing your desire so that your desire works for you. You're not working for your desire. You see how that's like a really great thing to do in life, and to understand and to be able to do, so that your fire is feeding you. It's not overwhelming you, like in the 10 Wands. So I put her in the music room because, of course, something that's both emotional and passionate, of course, is music. It's like a drug that's really good for you, or that doesn't hurt you. So I put her at a piano, again with a candelabra, just kind of luxuriating in her feminine power. And yeah, I love that. And then we have in the background, we have the symbol of a crown put kind of on that mirror as well, just to remember that she's a queen. Yeah. Oh, and then the final, oh wow, this will be the last card that I'm describing in this video series, if you're watching it in the order of when I put them up. So here we have the Vampire King of Wands. I love this card. It's actually, they put it on the outside, on the reverse side of this tarot deck. And so there we have the Vampire King. And is it his victim? Has he killed her? Has he sucked her dry? Or has she just fainted and he's carrying her off to the bed or off to the rug or off to the couch? It's really up to you to decide how you want to interpret it. It is very much the card of giving yourself over to passion. And so when we see Raven there in his arms, that kind of complete giving oneself over to whatever it is that captivates you. We have that beautiful fire um, illuminating them in the room. You can hear it crackling. You can smell, that nice, the nice smoky smell. It's such a visceral card. He's such a dapper, kind of stereotypical, dashing vampire. One that certainly I like to think about. And yeah, so that's it. What are you giving yourself over to? And if you're identifying with the Raven character on this card, or if you want to take on this King's energy, how are you standing in your passion? How are you executing your passionate ideas? And how are you standing in your power? Because when you are expressing a passionate thing, you're affecting other people. So this card is also, this King of Wands is very much about the cause and effect of passion and how you can inspire others or affect others and yourself. And that pretty much sums it up. That's it. So thank you so much for watching this series. Please keep questions, comments coming. I'm super happy to answer them. And I'm really glad that you're here with me. So thank you so much. Stay spooky, stay sexy, and yeah, keep exploring those haunted houses and haunted places within yourself, because when you do, you'll find more about yourself, find out more about yourself than any fortune teller could ever tell.